Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 209th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss political leadership, both elected and appointed, or any other type of leadership that we might want to discuss. Leadership is leadership. Today's panel begins with Tom Finley, retired vice president at Rubbermaid Incorporated, Patty Haskins, former member of the Wadsworth City Council, and Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services, and Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist. Tom, according to many people, we have a crisis in leadership in this country. Can you describe effective leadership and how we can attain it?
Well, yes, John, I've really reflected on this. And the problem we have is most of the positions in government are not leadership positions. We just call them that. Senators, representatives don't behave like leaders. Leaders are in charge of organization and all the resources necessary to run an organization, the biggest of which is human resources. That means they define the values, the outcomes, the measurements. All of those are already defined in the Constitution, so the leaders already were provided there. The only leaders we have, and I boiled all this down with my definition, are the presidency, Speaker of the House, and the senator. The rest are not in the role of leadership. Now you ask the question, then, well, what do they do? The best word that keeps coming up, and we use it, is they're representatives of us. And now, what does that mean? It is a whole different thing from leadership. And so I would lay that on the table today, saying, well, then what is a representative if they're not a leader? And I lay that in front of you as the question.
Okay, Tom, I appreciate that, but I'm wondering very quickly, what about the cabinet people, the Secretary of Defense, all the other leaders of huge organizations? Don't they lead?
They fit the bill.
Yeah.
They meet the definition of a leader. They've got human resources, et cetera, et cetera. They define, and just as a corporate leader does. That's okay. That's a leadership role. The way we talk about a senator and a representative, that's different.
Yeah. Patty, what are your thoughts? Having been an elected official for many years.
Yeah. I think we have to look at the definition of leadership and what I like the word you used, effective leadership, because there's a lot of leaders that are not effective. And while they lead, they might not be leading in the correct direction. I mean, a leader does have to influence people, and they have to guide them and guide their followers. They have to obtain those followers, but they also need to have clear set goals and a clear vision of what they want in the future. They have to be able to make sound decisions. They do need to be self-confident in their views, and they need to be strong. And I'll address strong in a little bit more, because sometimes that is misleading. They have to be communicative so that they can express their views. They have to have innovative thinking, be strategic, have visionary decisions. They have to be able to delegate, because no one can do everything themselves. But more importantly, I think to be an effective leader and to be a good leader, they have to listen to ideas from others. They have to admit mistakes. They cannot have a goal that is self-aggrandizement. They must support policies that will lead or be beneficial to their followers, not just to themselves. And unfortunately, what we have, I think, in politics around the world is people that try to lead by strength, but ignore everything else. I mean, I've heard from many people on the other side of and the other party that have said that Putin is a good leader. Well, I don't think he's a good leader. He's a strong leader, but he's not a good one. You look at people like Viktor Orban in Hungary, who has been put out there as a standard, as a strong leader. I don't want a socialist like Orban in charge. You have people like Erdogan in Turkey. You have the newest leader in Italy, Meloni, who has stated that Mussolini was a great leader. He was a leader, but not in a great way. So that, some people equate, unfortunately, too many people equate being strong as the only thing that classifies you as a good leader. They have to take into effect all of these other things that I have mentioned. In our local politics, unfortunately, and I think this is why we have the problems that Tom mentioned, too many people go into politics not because they want to help the populace, but because they want to have a feather in their own cap. Or they have one issue that they're really upset about, and they don't care about anything else as long as they get that one issue. I mean, I can remember over the years people running for school board because their kid did not make the basketball team. And that was their sole purpose. They didn't care about anything else. They just wanted that done. There are people in politics, that do that now. I recently was talking to a friend of mine, good friend of mine from a neighboring city. And she said that during COVID, when it first started, one of the big concerns was the fact that the schools weren't open and they were trying to get computer access to all of the students in the city. And there were a number of areas within the city that did not have Wi-Fi and students that did not have computers. So one lady that was a friend of hers set about trying to solve that problem. She got the grant money. She worked with the schools. She worked with the city and made sure that this program went into effect. Did a great job. That's a good example of leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
providing for the better good. The interesting thing, though, is that city received an award for this program. Now, when the award was presented, it didn't go to her. It went to the councilman who showed up and glad-handed and stood there for all the pictures as if he had anything to do with this award.
Mm-hmm.
And there's too many people like that in politics that aren't the workers, that aren't the leaders that we want them to be. We're really blessed in Wadsworth because we have a mayor that I think is a leader and does so for the good of the community. And she's the opposite party of mine. I don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican. I want a good leader. There have been good leaders over the years. Obviously George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. Look at Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. I think Angela Merkel is an example of a recent leader. Look at Zelensky in the Ukraine. That is a leader that is concerned about his country and is doing what is best for his country and is leading in a positive way. And that's what we need in politics and in different areas.
What about you, Bryan? Do you think we have a good leader in Wadsworth?
Yeah, I better say yes because I'll catch it when I get home.
Yeah.
No, I think Patty and Tom have brought up some very good points. One of the issues is that it's hard to ferret out that type of leadership skills in individuals. It usually, the issues usually show up after they've been elected or after they've been given the position of a leader. I think of, and it's a common saying is that leaders lead. Leaders aren't managers. Managers manage processes. You don't manage people, you lead people. So a lot of times leaders sometimes think they have to manage people. People can manage themselves if you give them a clear goal and you hold them accountable to that goal that they've agreed to, achieve, whether it's in your work, whether it's in a volunteer organization. There has to be some sort of accountability. And so often leaders are very hesitant to keep people accountable to that. Now, that doesn't mean the old keep their feet to the fire, or you embarrass them, or you shame them in public in a committee meeting or something like that. But there are ways to keep people on task and lead them and let them see, what you're expecting from them. The idea of a servant leader, people that are out there, it's sort of like, Patty has been talking about what makes a good leader, the person that's willing to get out there, roll up their sleeves. Nobody knows who that person is because they're not showing up with just for the photo op. Okay. They're there, they're doing everything. They're showing people what they need to do. I'll share with you a little experience. Some time ago, we took our youth out to there is a Naval Reserve station on Route 8. It's just on the other side of the bridge at the University of Akron. And they have a detachment of Marines there. Some are regular Marines and some are Marine reservists. And they have an obstacle course there. So we thought it would be a great idea to take our youth from our church out there and expose them to Marine leadership, philosophy, and all that kind of stuff. So we sat through a several-hour presentation. This young man who was a Marine, and he took them through. He talked about how they are organized, how they affect change in people. The waterfront, and it was great. And he said, now we're going to go out and we're going to practice some leadership skills through this obstacle course. So all the adults are standing around while the kids are, going through this obstacle course. And this young man came up to us and he said, by default, you're their leaders. Leaders have to lead. So I expect you to go through this obstacle course with them. Now, I'll tell you what, that wakes you up, immediately, that you're going to be leading these kids, even though we weren't considered their particular leaders. They had youth leaders, but they expected us to set that example. So I've sort of remembered that, over the years, that, leaders have to be in front of the organization. You don't lead from behind. I finished that book on Ulysses Grant. He, people would show up and he'd be sitting around the fire with people and they thought he was just some regular old, conscript. They had no idea who he was until he got on that horse and led the charge. He was a leader. And you see that in a lot of different organizations. Unfortunately, it's easy to hide some of those unwanted traits. And I've run into a few of those people in the corporate world. They work their way up to a position of leadership, and they really have no leadership skills. They keep people off balance. They berate people. They set objectives that are clearly unachievable. They have no concept. They're not attached to their organization. They're on the fourth floor, and the only way you get to the fourth floor is if you take the elevator. They're not accessible to their people. And I'll close with this, which is a positive change. My son works for Traeger Grills in Salt Lake City. Their organization is flat. And I'm sure Tom and John, Ron, Patty probably understand that term. No one has an assigned office or desk. No one. So for my son to get a desk, he gets there at 7:30 because he wants this particular desk. And not that it's his desk, but if he gets in there later, someone else will have that desk. The COO of the company comes in at 9:30. Sometimes he has to sit in a desk by the cafeteria. He got in late. He didn't get a desk. Then there's a room where they have private meetings where the CEO and the COO and the CFO meet, but they don't have offices. So they're right there amongst their people. That's, I think, the type of leadership we need to get to, that servant leadership where you're out amongst your people. You know what's going on. You're not waiting for the quarterly report or the monthly report or the weekly report where you're just looking at data and trying to make decisions. And I think that's where a lot of our organizations have gone astray, is that they're not out there. They really don't have a sense as to what's going on in their organization, whether it's a city, whether it's a corporation, whether it's your volunteer group, or whether it's a school. I'll close with this really quick. Andy Hill is a leader. Our superintendent is a leader. He stands out there and welcomes kids from third grade. He's at the high school. He's out there rain or shine. That's not often you see that in a superintendent. And we've got a young man, relatively young compared to me, who is a leader. That is a leader. That's what you're looking for. So I'll end with that.
Okay, Ron, before I turn this over to you, I got a question to ask. Is everybody's picture okay?
No, mine's not, but
I can see everybody well.
Are they moving?
the only person I see is Ron.
Really?
Okay, well,
But I think
I
that's,
see everybody, but there's no motion. Okay, we don't really need that, I suppose.
It looks good on my end.
Really?
Yeah,
Testing.
We're fine.
Okay. Well, Ron, chime in.
It's a little different. In sciences, particularly as an industrial scientist, rather than an academic one, I didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to set policy, to set the ideas. I had lots of occasions of supervisory responsibility of lab technicians. At one point in Connecticut, I had the title of technology task leader. That didn't really amount to much because I'm not. I can see anything. I could suggest a course of experimentation. Maybe it would get approved, and maybe it wouldn't. I had to supervise the technicians. Thinking back on it, my style was more participatory than dictatorial. I was there, kind of there with them, and teaching, doing some teaching maybe. Met a man recently. We moved back, and I had to jog his memory of who I was. But he said, "Oh, I remember now. You taught me how to do such and such a calculation that I did all the time. I didn't understand it." So things like that I did. So I've agreed with everybody really so far about the qualities that you need in a leadership. I don't know that I ever had them, but
Ron, it sounds like you were an ideal leader.
Well, I don't know. People got things done, certainly.
Yes.
I had one fellow I had a little more difficulty stimulating than some others, but he was a little more laissez-faire. But in general, the guys knew the processes and the procedures and the equipment better than I did. They'd been there longer. I'd come in. Okay, I'm in this laboratory, and these guys have been here for the last 5 or 6 years running these experiments, and I'd put my stamp on it, and maybe go a little different direction, but a little bit different because I wasn't setting a whole lot of goals, so I was kind of following the general corporate policy. And academic chemists who have a little more freedom for that, but I did not.
I suppose there are a number of definitions of a leader or of leadership. One of them that I like is you pick the right people for the job, tell them what's expected of them, and give them everything they need to succeed. If that includes a little nudge from time to time or some advice.
Yeah.
Listen to what we've all said, and I didn't realize it, but it's been very consistent. The only place you have a leader is where there are human resources to lead.
Yeah.
Therefore, the definition of leadership is defined, and it does not figure into senator or a representative, only in the presidencies, the leader of the House, the leader of the Senate. where they have human resources responsibilities to lead. A senator, where are the human resource responsibilities of a senator? Therefore, they're a representative, not a leader.
And how do they get put into a position of leadership in a democracy? They're elected by the people. And I've always had a problem with the concept of trying to convince every citizen to vote, no matter what kind of effort they put into finding out anything about the person they're voting for, anything about the policy or the issues at hand. But as long as you're a citizen, you must vote. And somehow the idea is out there that the more people who vote, the better off the country is going to be. I keep thinking back to a young lady that I met at one time, who couldn't tell us, and we were in a group, could not tell us who the current president of the United States was. It took 3 guesses for her to get it right. She's a school teacher.
Oh,
Now, my feeling was, what does her vote contribute to the country? No, I'm not going to encourage her to vote. I'm not going to do all of these things that make it easier to vote. Not when we're talking about something as critical as picking the appropriate leaders. I think personally, we've got a horrible leader in the White House right now. The only thing worse would be the last one, who wants to.
Now you're into politics.
Well, yes. Well, this
And
is
no, that's not. It's not for you to decide on the leadership, is it?
As a citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As a
I have a
voter, it is his
responsibility
right.
to find out about the people and the issues, and then go to the polling place and vote.
Now you just
that's really difficult to do in many cases, particularly the down ballot issues. You know, I got to learn about all of these judges that are running. I got to learn about all of these councilmen, these local people. I got to learn about the state representatives and so forth. It's sometimes difficult to find out really unbiased stuff. You know, I don't watch a lot of network TV. I do a lot of YouTube and Netflix and so on. And J.D. Vance has been advertising on YouTube, and it's all negative. He says all the things that Tim Ryan are against. He's against the border wall, and he says that like it's a bad thing. I don't know. Anyway, it's difficult to know, other than the other reading I've done about his policies and the fact that he switched and became a Trump supporter and is attempting to out Trump. Apparently, it's hard to find out what the man believes. He doesn't say. It's hard, and it's been hard, really difficult to get a good, clear picture of Ryan. But I'm trying, and I agree with you, John, that you have to do that. On the other hand, I don't quite agree that you should make it more difficult to vote.
You know,
I want to go back to the word leadership and back to the word representative, and the positions of senator and the House representative have never meant to be leadership positions. They're representative positions. That's a whole different set of skills.
But they are in a position to be put into a leadership position if they're in the House or the Senate. There are various committees that need leaders.
and as members of those committees,
John.
and as members of those committees,
Pardon me, Patty. What?
as members of those committees, they do have to introduce legislation that is going to help the country. They have to be a leader as far as writing that legislation, seeing that it gets introduced. No, I think they do, because
no, they don't. They have to be good at writing, and et cetera, et cetera. That's not leadership qualities.
I think that's part of it. I really do.
It may be part of it. So is breathing. But you see, if we have not defined the role of a representative, what's the key thing of a representative? Who should he, she be maintaining relationships with.
Well, isn't that a problem that we've had with this? We supposedly we pick a guy or a gal who's going to represent us, who's going to follow the wishes and the desires and the needs of their particular body, but sometimes they'll go on their own way. They may not. We don't always agree with everything that our representatives are saying, particularly if they're from the other party. We're being partisan about this. How do we do that? Here we say, okay, I'm voting for segregation because my community is segregated. No, but then the guy says, no, I realize that that's wrong, and I'm going to vote the other way. We're probably his community is going to vote him out the next time. So the guy has the person as a representative has decisions to make, and he may sometimes have to. I think, as Patty said, it has to lead here. He has to try to educate his constituency.
Yeah, well, Patty, I want to hear what Patty has to say. She's the only one of us who has an experience as an elected representative, and on a body like a city council, which is a mini version of the United States Congress, in my view. Patty, what was your point you were trying to make?
Well, for example, a member of council that we have presently and still is on council decided that he wanted to get a dog park established in Wadsworth. So he took the lead on that. He went to the officials that would be in charge of it, got the legislation, saw to it that the legislation was written up, talked to the people in the community, got the surveys out there, and we have a dog park now. Now that may seem like a minor thing to some people, but that was
hear what she just said?
Yeah, she talked about leadership, Tom.
He went to.
That's part of delegation, though, Tom. That's part of
I'm
fine.
not talking about delegating.
No one leader can do everything themselves. They have to go to other people to actually carry out the job themselves.
That's my point, Patty. That's when they're leaders, when they go to.
I think
that's what he was doing. So
I think you're saying the same thing. Unfortunately, our 27 minutes is long over. So we're going to have to meet 2 weeks from now, but we're going to continue this discussion in a moment.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.